let's talk about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks in particular, and Donald Trump Jr. So just a brief overview of pretty much everything. It really shows, this article really shows conversation between Donald Trump Jr. and WikiLeaks that took place in on Twitter in their direct messages. Donald Trump Jr. has confirmed this. He released the full exchange to Twitter a few minutes ago. And actually, I think I want to read the full exchange. And then also Julian Assange has not denied this, right? To a certain extent, he's helped confirm it. So I want to put that up front because we have quite a few people who are making it seem as though this is the deep state who wants to defame Julian Assange and all this other stuff. Like people are really they're serious about this. And so I have to put it at the top that both Donald Trump Jr. as well as Julian Assange have confirmed this. Donald Trump Jr. confirmed it by sharing it. Julian Assange indirectly confirmed it by not denying it. So we'll take that as a tacit confirmation. So the context, the actual messaging really shows WikiLeaks almost, I hate to describe it like this, but you ever seen a desperate guy jump into the DMs of a woman and just beg, plead, come on, let me get it, you know, that kind of thing. This is what this entire exchange reminds me of. And I'm not saying that to just throw off on WikiLeaks. I'm not a fan of Julian Assange. Right. I think anybody who's been watching my show, I think about 6 months, maybe a year ago. No, almost a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago, it hit me exactly who and what Julian Assange was. Right. So I have not been a big fan of Julian Assange. However, I have been pretty fair with WikiLeaks because I take them as really just a media outlet that gets leaks. Now I have, again, a full transparency. I have an issue with Julian Assange because I think he's a megalomaniac who believes more in his ability, believes more, thinks too highly of himself, thinks that he would sit and watch all of America burn for the sake of his ego and for the sake of his personal agenda, not for the sake of radical transparency, right? It's not, and that's the problem. This is where it overlaps Julian Assange and WikiLeaks because it's the reputation of WikiLeaks that mattered the most. That reputation that superseded Julian Assange, right? This is how we were able to separate WikiLeaks from Julian Assange for so long because we looked at Julian Assange as the founder, but not necessarily the life force behind WikiLeaks on a day-to-day basis. Besides, he's stuck in the Ecuadorian consulate, right? The Ecuadorian embassy in the UK. So how can he be the day-to-day? I mean, of course, the internet makes that possible, but still, you know, we separated the two because WikiLeaks had a reputation of being unbiased and almost simply here are the facts. Here are the facts. This is what we found and we're going to share. Now that started to crack. That assumption started to crack 2016, Julian Assange was on Fox and Friends, and Fox and Friends directly asked him if he had damaging information on Donald Trump. He said in that interview, yes, I do have information on Donald Trump, but there's no point in releasing it because it's not as salacious as everything else that Donald Trump says on a regular basis. Now that for me was the first crack in this idea that WikiLeaks was above the fray. You know, particularly in the terms of radical transparency, because radical transparency says that it's not up to Julian Assange or WikiLeaks to determine whether or not something that Donald Trump has done is worthwhile releasing to the public. Radical transparency says you get it, you release it. Catch and release, catch and release. So that was, you know, about 2 years ago, or I don't know, 2016, sometime before the election, that started to crack. But today, this release from WikiLeaks is pretty bad. This release from Donald Trump Jr. through, okay, let's get the chain of the chain of custody, because I think that's important. Donald Trump Jr. turned these emails over to congressional investigators. So this is not a big It doesn't even look bad on Donald Trump Jr., to be fair, to be honest with you. It looks like Donald Trump Jr. wasn't really interested, just, indirectly interested in something big maybe, but not in the request of WikiLeaks. So it doesn't look bad on Donald Trump Jr. per se. It does look bad on WikiLeaks. But before I even go to there, to finish the chain of custody, from Donald Trump Jr. to congressional investigators, from congressional investigators, somebody leaked it to the Atlantic. And I'm laughing because of the irony of a leak hurting WikiLeaks. And there is a bit of irony there. You have to admit that is some serious irony. But anyway, and I'm bringing up this Twitter. I want to read the full account, and then we'll discuss the article version. But I think it's worthwhile because it really shines a negative light on WikiLeaks, because they seem really determined to get favors from Donald Trump. And that 100% undermines their credibility as unbiased players. And that's the crux of this thing, right? WikiLeaks depended on their radical transparency, one, and the idea that they're just giving us information, radical information, not anything biased, nothing with a political leaning. But when you see these comments from, when you see these comments and the things that they requested in this Twitter DM, you realize that we can't really say that they were unbiased. And that's the problem. Because once you feel that WikiLeaks is no longer unbiased, well, that really, it doesn't undermine their previous work altogether, but it makes you question. You have to. If you are going to be fair with this thing, you're going to have to ask the questions about WikiLeaks motivations. Absolutely. All right. So let's take a look at a couple of the first things. Here are the damning bits and pieces of this exchange. And it's a little, well, anyway, let me not describe it. Let me read it. So the worst things that are in here are coming from WikiLeaks, and leading up to the election. One of the things that they asked was for Donald Trump to contest the election results and to basically undermine the election, the integrity of the election. That's the other thing. The other thing, I'm just running them off the top of my head before I give you the actual quotes. The other thing was they asked Donald Trump to make Julian Assange, or to request that Australia make Julian Assange the ambassador. Seriously, the ambassador to Washington, in Washington, D.C. And then they asked for Donald Trump's tax returns. And that's the one that got me, the request for his tax returns underneath the guise of being transparent. And I'm sorry, actually the word I'm looking for is unbiased, for the appearance of being unbiased. So anyway, that's the crux. Those are the three main things that make WikiLeaks look bad in this. And I'm sorry, it really is not a good look. All right, so here, let's go through all of them. The ones that I'm reading now are unedited. These are directly from Donald Trump Jr. He copied them and he shared them on Twitter after the Atlantic article started. So this is where it began back in September 20th, 2016. A PAC running anti-Trump site PutinTrump.org is about to launch. The PAC is a recycled pro-Iraq war PAC. We have guessed the password. It is Putin Trump. Well, shame on these guys. If that's your password, that's not. Shame on PutinTrump.org. I mean, that's pretty bad. That's like being your password being 1234. But anyway, I digress. See about for who it is Putin Trump. See about for who is behind it. Any comments? And this is one of the few responses Donald Trump Jr. gave. He said, off the record, I don't know who that is, but I'll ask around. Thanks. And again, I want to emphasize that honestly, I don't see this being super bad for Trump or Trump Jr. because it's more WikiLeaks begging than it is Trump doing anything. All right. So anyway, the second email is the second message came a few days later on October 3rd, 2016, a year ago. Hillary Clinton on Assange Can't we? Oh, okay. This is where they share the article where Hillary Clinton said, can't we just drone this guy? Remember, I think everybody remembers that. That was a pretty big day. And they said that they wanted to get Trump Jr. to push this. And this is one of the places where he actually did it. He said that they saw it and that they had already did it. The next message, I already did that earlier today. It's amazing what she can get away with, speaking of Hillary Clinton. And then followed up saying, what's behind this Wednesday leak I keep hearing? I'm reading everything. I'm reading everything because people are trying to make it seem as though the Atlantic actually edited this, but really they didn't. I mean, everything so far is like word for word what the Atlantic reported. It's like they got this exact copy from a staffer on the Congressional Investigative Committee, and then they did a report on it, and probably are getting millions of clicks, by the way. It's amazing how much good journalism you can do when people are just feeding you stuff, but I digress. So this is WikiLeaks now writing back to Trump Jr. They did not, to WikiLeaks credit, they did not answer the question, what's behind this Wednesday leak I keep reading about? Trump Jr. came back looking for information about a leak. They didn't reply. But they replied a couple days later with this. Hey, Donald, great to see you and your dad talking about publication. Strongly suggest your dad tweet this link if he mentions us. I.e., you guys can get all your followers digging through the content. There are many great stories there the press are missing, and we are sure some of your followers will find it. Outsourcing some of their work. By the way, just released Podesta Emails Part 4. They continue. This is October 12th. Hey, Don, we have an unusual idea. Leak us. This is one of the big ones. This is important. Leak us one or more of your father's tax returns. The benefits are this. 1, most of the harm has already been done by the New York Times and preempted by your father, tax write-downs. 2, it's possible that at any moment they could come out through the most biased source, New York Times, MSNBC, who would distort them into the worst possible light. Okay, not necessarily the New York Times. And let's not pretend like the New York Times doesn't have an entire conservative section, but anyway, it helps their narrative. Okay, MSNBC for sure. 3, if we published them, it would dramatically improve our perception of our impartiality. This is the real kicker. That means that the vast amount of stuff that we are publishing about Clinton will have much higher impact because it won't be perceived as coming from a pro-Trump, pro-Russian source, which the Clinton administration campaign is constantly slandering us with. Now, forget about, I'm sure somebody is going to say, somebody who's intentionally obtuse on the liberal side of the equation, they're going to say, see, they're admitting that they're pro-Trump and that they're pro-Russian because of this exchange. No, I'm admitting that they are I'm claiming that they're pro-Trump for the entirety of this thing. But I don't think that they're using pro-Russian here in quotes, meaning we're pro-Russian. Right. I'm sorry for the radio audience. You absolutely did not see my air quotes there. But here, I got to read this one again because this paragraph speaks volumes. If we publish Donald Trump's tax returns, it will dramatically improve the perception of our impartiality. This is the real kicker. That means that the vast amount of stuff that we're publishing about Clinton will have much higher impact because it won't be perceived as coming from a pro-Trump source, which the Clinton campaign is constantly slandering us with. Well, listen, bitches, this is exactly what you've just done to yourself with this because you're looking for cover. That's what WikiLeaks was looking for here. They're looking for cover to say, okay, everything that we publish has been negative Hillary Clinton, and it would help Donald Trump out if we weren't coming off as anti-Hillary Clinton or if we weren't coming off as pro-Trump. So leak us your information because if you leak us your information, it would do more damage to Hillary Clinton than it would do to you. Clearly, that's the negotiating point. Leak us your information, and it would do more damage to Hillary Clinton than it would do to Donald Trump. And if that doesn't show impartiality or the lack of impartiality, the fact that they are partial to Donald Trump, the fact that they are biased, well, if that doesn't do it, then here's some more. Let's keep going. It keeps going. You can email them to office@wikileaks.org or use a secure submission system. I'm reading, like I said, again, I'm reading the entire exchange because people are trying to make it seem as though the folks edited it dramatically. All right, let's see. It seems to be all of them. Did I miss one? Unusual idea leak. It's a possible any moment. Okay, so there's one more that he did not release. Let me go to his timeline. If he doesn't have it on his timeline, there's the final one that has, yeah. The final one is the kicker, and Donald Trump Jr. didn't release that one. That's ironic. He's talking about being transparent, but he didn't. Donald Trump Jr. is talking about being, but no worries. The Atlantic has the final one, and the final one is the best one of them all. Let me just do a quick search. Ambassador. Okay. Here's the final one. Oh, get out of here. Get out of here. All these ads. I hate this. Why do you think I have ad blockers on everything? Trump Jr. did not respond. I'm reading directly from theatlantic.com now. Trump Jr. did not respond to the messages either, but WikiLeaks was undeterred. Hi, Don. Hope you're all doing well. WikiLeaks wrote on December 16th. December 16th, 2016, Donald Trump had already become president-elect. All right? So keep that in your mind. This is the request. Hi, Don. Hope you're doing well. In relation to Mr. Assange, Obama/Clinton placed pressure on Sweden, UK, and Australia, his home country, to illicitly go after Mr. Assange. It would be real easy and helpful for your dad to suggest that Australia appoint Assange ambassador to Washington, D.C. That's a real smart, tough guy and the most, hang on, let me read the rest of it. WikiLeaks even imagined how Trump might put it. That's a real smart, tough guy and the most famous Australian you have. Or something similar. They continue to write, WikiLeaks continue to write to Donald Trump Jr. They won't do it, but it will send the right signals to Australia, UK, and Sweden to start following the law and stop bending it to ingratiate themselves with the Clintons. Look, somebody, first of all, somebody at WikiLeaks is fired, right? They're out the fold. Whoever was not smart enough to carry these conversations all out on Twitter, whoever did that, they need to be off the island like yesterday. That's number one. Number two, even if they're trying to put things in phrases to suggest that they really believe what Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are doing to Julian Assange is a crime and it's unfair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's besides the point, right? We can set that entire thing aside because they're seeking favors from the Trump administration before he was elected, after he's elected, asking to become the ambassador, but even though they know it's not going to happen, but it's going to benefit Julian Assange because it's going to make people start thinking and talking in a different way. I'm sorry, this is 100% showing us that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks have, they have been pro-Trump all along. And here's the thing, somewhere somebody is lying. And I'm sure there's a lot of places, but this is what I mean in particular. They're looking for information on Donald Trump, negative information on Donald Trump, right? That's the whole premise. And they were going to use it to help make them seem more impartial so that it could be damaging to Hillary Clinton, right? So this is not, before I give my other thesis, my other argument, let me drive this home here. This just, I don't know why people are making this argument, but attempting to get his tax returns to appear impartial is not the same as attempting to get his tax returns in order to have radical transparency, right? We have to establish that. It was them trying to ingratiate themselves to the Trump campaign from the very first point of contact on September 20th, 2016. They've been trying to ingratiate themselves to the Trump campaign since before the election, before election night. They started off by giving them the password to a competitor, to someone who was going to a political action group that was going to run negative ads or something. And the reason this matters so much is because 90% of their credibility on the progressive side of the equation has been based on them being this unbiased arbiter of information, and that if they get it, they release it. But again, I have to harken back to this to the interview that Julian Assange did on Fox and Friends when they asked him if he had negative information on Donald Trump, and he said, yes, I do, but it's no point. Matter of fact, I should just pull it up in case people think I'm lying. Oh, Ben, you're lying. Well, no. One thing I don't do is lie, especially not on purpose, not intentionally. I might lie because I'm getting old and forgetting stuff, But Julian Assange, and I'm putting it in the search engine, Fox and Friends, and it's about at the 2-minute mark if my memory serves me right. I'm going to cue it up so that you can hear it for yourself, because it really shows you that two things are true. Number one, they have not engaged in radical transparency this entire time, because radical transparency means if you have it and you can confirm it, release it. Julian Assange says, yes, we have it. We have negative information on Donald Trump, but we're not going to release it because we don't think it's as important as stuff that he says. Let's listen in.
Julian, you just said the Republican campaign. Do you have information about Donald Trump?
We do have some information about the Republican campaign. I mean, from a point of view of an investigative journalist organization like WikiLeaks, the problem with the Trump campaign is it's actually hard for us to publish much more controversial material than what comes out of Donald Trump's mouth every second day.
There it is. So that's not radical transparency, ladies and gentlemen. I'm being a filter. That is, I have information and I'm going to curate it, and I'm going to give you what I think is important. That is the exact opposite of radical transparency. In fact, that is what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks got into this ongoing feud with The Intercept and Glenn Greenwald. Because Glenn Greenwald agrees that there should be a modicum of curation, particularly where it involves the safety and the identities of people who do not need to be doxxed, exposed, or if we expose them, their lives could be in danger. WikiLeaks said no, because that's going to undermine the fundamental nature of radical transparency. But then they're holding back information on Donald Trump. So now they haven't lost the idea that they're radically transparent, right? With that one thing doesn't make their radical transparency claim null and void, but it definitely undermines it. And I think anybody reasonable and being fair about it should at least be able to say that much, that once you begin censoring the information and you begin curating the information that you give to us, then it's no longer radically transparent based on your own definition. That's number one. But then now we've been saying it. I've been telling you. We've been saying, I'm actually quoting a movie there. We've been saying it for some time that it seems like everything that the WikiLeaks is doing is to help Donald Trump. And then everybody was saying all along, well, he just doesn't have information, Ben. He just doesn't have information on Donald Trump. Well, yeah, he did. He just said he did. And now we have the why to the what. The what is he didn't release anything negative on Donald Trump. You know, despite the fact that they had negative information on Donald Trump. And if we compare that to what's happening today, we see the why. It's because they wanted to ingratiate themselves with the Trump campaign. And that fundamentally undermines all of this idea of them being unbiased arbiters of information. There's no going back on that. They're begging. They're in the DMs shooting their shot, trying to get everything they can from the Trump administration, from the Trump campaign, and then the Trump administration. Which some people try to argue, well, what else are they supposed to do? They should, no. Julian Assange, as an individual, should be doing that. Trying to get whatever he can to help his case, to help him get out of the trouble that he's got that has found him, right? That's Julian Assange, not WikiLeaks as an organization. WikiLeaks doing that as an organization is beyond the pale. Nerdy Gamer says, no, all Assange has to do is publish something on the Republicans and they'll be vindicated by the other side. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, because let me address that directly. That's not the case, because, I mean, in what Nerdy is saying, she's saying, I think you're saying in the future, right? I think one of the commenters in YouTube saying is if they publish something negative on Republicans in the future, then they'll be fine with the Democrats. That's fine if you are the type of person who's just kind of a binary and they say, you know, us versus them. Like those people who can look at George W. Bush and say George W. Bush is an ally now. I think those are the people who could look at something from WikiLeaks in the future and say, oh, okay, you published something bad on Republicans, you're good with me. But for me, this undermines their credibility, like in perpetuity. Like we have to honestly evaluate everything that they put out through the lens of what's their angle. And that's okay, right? That's not a huge game changer, except for the people who venerated Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, because some people elevated Julian Assange and WikiLeaks above the political fray. And that part of their credibility is forever lost. You don't get that back. Not after this exchange. Not after begging and pleading to get something from from the Trump administration. Right? And no matter what they tried to, let's see, is there anything in there? See, here's the thing. Here's the thing. The last request, which is asking the Trump administration to do this favor and to suggest that they become, that Trump suggests that Julian Assange could be the ambassador, that undermines this argument that says that, oh, this is just Julian Assange and WikiLeaks trying to squeeze information out of Trump in order to get them to voluntarily leak something. Listen, folks, I don't know. I don't know what kind of world people live in, but let me tell you something. If you expect Donald Trump Jr. or Trump, the Trump campaign, or anyone affiliated with them to release something damning to WikiLeaks, and you think that you know what it is? I got to give the example, man, because I've been hearing about y'all in these DMs on Twitter. Some of y'all dudes out here on Twitter begging for sex. You know, I gotta censor myself. Like begging. It's like you're shooting your shot with, I don't know, Taraji. It's like me shooting my shot with Taraji, saying, baby, listen. If you do this, if you go out with me, then you know, I'm gonna whatever. Seriously, you really think that you're gonna shoot your shot through DMs and then the other person on the other end is just gonna give you everything that you asked for? You think your game is that tight? Come on. Reading everything that WikiLeaks asked and their justification for why it should be done is as lame as some dude trying to explain to Taraji, who is, you know, in my age category, she's hot, right? For some of these young bucks out there, I don't know who they, I don't know. I like older women, right? My wife's older than me. So, anyway, you know, it's whack. They are not cunning. These email exchanges are not cunning. They come off as legitimate requests of people who are trying to get in favor, ingratiate themselves to the Trump campaign. It does not come off to me at all as someone who thinks that they can actually squeeze a leaked document that's going to be revealing. Then you cannot expect to get something revealing and damning through a front door request. I'm sorry. Unless they really just think Donald Trump and them are dumb, but dumber than I think that they are, because I do think that they're dumb. But the entire email thread shows you that Donald Trump Jr., at least in this exchange with WikiLeaks, was not as dumb as I thought he is. I still think he is. I just think that his alarms went off when he saw it was something from WikiLeaks and decided to keep them at bay, which makes sense. Well, that makes good sense. You should, you know, I have to give him credit where credit is due. This does not look bad on Donald Trump Jr. This looks bad on WikiLeaks.